the Microsoft MTC here in Malvern. A few minutes after 8:30, after our hands-on lab covering .NET Core 3 and some of the .NET Core WinForms desktop porting with Rob, and then I did a little bit on C# 8, which was not everything that C# 8 can do. And I had to admit that I didn't necessarily understand all of it, but we did it. And we got to see a lot of cool C# 8 features. And so we're here with Andy Schwam and, of course, Schwam. Andy Schwam. No Schwammies. Stop.
We do this every time I'm here.
So Andy Schwam, and then, of course, Rich Ross is producing. And so thanks for joining us. And if you're here watching us from the future, then fantastic. Let us know. So there was a lot of code tonight. And you can always tell when new language features are being brought into C# that there's been groans, and then sometimes people like stand up and cheer. Like I remember when LINQ came in, and when LINQ came in, it was presented to us as database access. If I remember correctly, data access, sure, but I know that's what we think of it now, because I think we have a little more mature understanding. But if I remember correctly, and I think it was a PDC, when they're up on stage, Anders is saying, LINQ, it's amazing, let's do some code, and it was using query syntax. So those language keywords right in there that say for something, the DB context in, and who uses those anymore, right? I think a lot of people, at least, have switched over to method syntax, where you have access to a lot more different, a lot of other things you can do on an enumerable than just because what happens
there's things that you can't do in
query syntax. Yeah,
right.
Part of it is a maturity that this isn't just to access your database. And I think since that's how it was revealed to us, that for a long time a lot of developers thought that, and I was actually kind of one of those developers. Like, oh, I guess this is how we link to SQL. Okay.
Well, I was going to just say, link to SQL was what it was predated Entity Framework,
right? And
that got ingrained in people's heads, right? That's actually, spoiling something here, but one of my interview questions sort of leads down. I usually ask people about LINQ.
Okay.
And I'm being honest here. Sometimes people will go right into, well, LINQ is for querying databases.
Exactly.
And I say,
that's my point.
No, it's not.
Right. Yeah. My point is I think that since that's how it came on stage many years ago,
right,
that for the longest time it was kind of, and then you hear people every once in a while talking about, like, well, there's LINQ to objects, and eventually what you kind of realize is this doesn't have anything to do with LINQ 2. This is about operating on lists and enumerables, right? And doing really cool things with that stuff. So that's now it's old hat, and here we are today, C#. We're talking about things like ranges, and I don't know what everybody thought about that range syntax. See if I can grab a couple of these. Wow, what did you think
what's
about
cool
it?
About, by the way, what I think is cool about a lot of these features, not all these features, right? That C#'s a mature language, right? And we're at the we're getting this is gravy. A lot of this stuff, some of it's syntactic sugar, some of it's not, But I love about this stuff is that it just keeps getting better and better. And some of these aren't, like as you described today, some of these aren't earth-shattering features, but there's a lot of features that are about making your code more readable and just simpler to use and things like that. So on the indexes, I haven't really played around with it a lot. There's some parts of it that are it's a little weird, like looking at it from my perspective. I think it's a little weird. I'm gonna get used to it.
Yeah.
And I think I'll use it. So and there was some comment, by the way, on the stream while you were talking. One of the guys was talking about how he thought, as I did when you first started saying it, when you do like 1.3, we both had that assumption that 3 was like a count, right? Like start at 1, take, like a start and take, right?
Yeah.
And then you went on and explained a little bit, and one of the things I said to him on the chat was that I think that's an assumption that I think a lot of people are going to fall into that and have to sort of unlearn thinking it that way, because it just looks like it wouldn't be that.
Well, I have to admit that I realized as I was doing the lab that I thought that too, because one of my comments still says that.
I saw that,
and I didn't fix it once I figured out how it really worked.
Yeah.
And so, it was the first thing that popped in my head. So I've got some code here that we can look at real quick, kind of go back over ranges. We talked about it briefly at the hands-on lab, which I suppose what we could do is we could try to remember to come back later and put that hands-on lab up in the corner there on YouTube. We'll see if we remember, or if I'm still pointing at air, then that means we haven't done it.
And also reference Scott K's great
Scott
talk.
K's YouTube video, which wasn't lab based. It was more like let's go through all the features, and it was very comprehensive. So
all of this is inherent on the fact that I go back.
Yeah, right.
And do the editing and do that fun stuff.
So leave us a comment if you're not seeing stuff in the upper right hand corner.
My head?
Because this is where it shows up.
It's right up there, right
there. So in any case, the first step so I've brought some of that range code back up now, and I've got the little squigglies here because if I head over to my CS proj file, I left it on latest, which technically means a latest supported version. And I remember that I could switch it to 8.0 here. I think that there was another keyword for. In fact, let's go see what it is. Let's see what it is. If I right click on the project, go to properties, and then go to the build tab and scroll all the way down to advanced. It's a little bit of a hunt. It did update, which is cool.
Pretty cool.
But what if I say unsupported preview of next C# version, which is like
put in
this is going to be like holy smokes is what it's going to say. Watch, let's see. It says preview. All right, I guess that makes sense.
So it's simpler.
It didn't say anything like
unsupported, right? Like some of the other naming conventions, like nullable below it.
Yeah, so 8.0, and now that squiggly is gone. And so here's what a range looked like. And it was saying, since I have an array here, we know that this is index 0, and maybe it's easier. What if I change these values? This is purely just to make them match the index. No other purpose to that.
Yeah.
Is I'm saying start at index 0, go to index 3, but you include the one on the left and you exclude the one on the right.
Yeah, that's strange, right? Like I think I heard when you were talking about it, I think if I was reading the room correctly, honestly, I think a lot of people are going like, oh, that's a little weird. Now, you didn't write this.
Why would you do that?
Why would I read? Why would you do that? That's what they're saying. Yeah, I think
just for the heck of it, I'm changing these to characters.
Yeah, sure.
Just to show that this all should still work. And then let's see, first three. What don't you like about this?
Spelled it wrong?
Oh, no.
Like you did before? No.
What's wrong?
Oh, it's an array. Well, yeah, there you go.
Okay, that should all be good now. So now we run it, and I'm expecting FG8. There we go. FG8 because I took value 0, 1, and 2, but not 3.
Yeah.
Kind of strange. So what if I did?
There's probably a real good reason for this, by the way.
Yeah, I agree. It was probably part of the language debate.
Oh, I'm sure, because we've been in the room for some of these debates, right? It's one of the nice benefits of being an MVP. Like sometimes, we hear them discuss some of these things. Not always, but it's really impressive to hear the thought.
Oh yeah,
I mean they don't just go like, oh, I don't know,
let's try this.
Coin. Yeah, right.
What'll happen is someone will say, well, if you did that, it would break some blah 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 and blah blah blah, and you're like, wow, I didn't even know about that.
Right. And Mads and Anders and Kathleen, they're all like in there, coming up with some really good reasons that I haven't even gotten close to considering yet.
So if I take this one, all right, we're starting at index 1, so we know that's G.
Yeah, so tell me the caret again. What was the caret?
The hat operator
it's called.
Is the same. It's the same exact thing as saying values.count. That's what the hat operator means.
Values.count.
And if you put a number after it, then it's like that. That's exactly what that means. It means go to that value. So if we are saying that we want to go to the count, there's 5 in values. We subtract 2, that gets to 3. That's 0, 1, 2, 3. And then I expect G, H, and I.
So is that inclusive or exclusive?
I guess we could find out.
Right. Let's find that out. And I don't know if those are the official words, but when you used them,
I saw them somewhere.
Yeah.
I saw them, so I didn't just make that up, fortunately. So inclusively, we expect G. We know that this translated to this index, but what we don't know is, are we going to get G and H, or are we going to get G, H, and I?
Right. And it's because it's 2, so it's the 2 in from the end, right? It's count minus 2.
It was exclusive. See that? So the right side, it's not about the hat operator.
See, I don't even know where I'm looking. You ran it already.
Oh,
I missed it. Oh, you know why? Because I don't see that screen. Yeah, that's weird.
That's odd. How does that debug console not show up?
Yeah,
we're still moving around.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. Because I'm looking at, we have monitors in the room, right? And I'm looking at the monitor, but the monitor's not picked. So spin your computer around to the screen.
So I promise you that we're looking at a debug console. How weird.
That's interesting. Rich, any thoughts on that? Put you on a spot there? I thought it was showing your screen completely. Now, I've seen times when you do sharing where
Maybe it's
in
grabbing
other
a window.
Yeah, like it's grabbing just a window, but if you switch to a browser, does it show the browser? Then it's
well, anyway.
Yeah, whatever.
So the point was that
it's
not about being a hat operator or not. It's about being on the left side of the range and the right side of the range, start and end. And these ranges, you can write when we get a chance, when we get back to the screen, you can write code where you really just declare a range as a variable. For example, like this is valid code.
Yeah, I like this idea that a range is a variable. That was really cool because now you have reusable. Again, code reuse.
You can pass this in.
You can make it a constant, so to speak, where we always want to use this range. I don't know if it's
right. Did I do this right?
Well, you called it a var.
You know what it
I
is?
think you have to call it.
Is I don't need this. That's what it is.
Yes.
So this syntax, I'm not using it, so it grayed out.
Right.
But that is a system.range.
Yeah, and that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And so I can even look into system.range, and I have the start value, the end value, get offset, and length. I don't know what I would do with these things, but interesting, right? Really interesting.
Now, if you use the hat -2, it doesn't know what the count is.
Well, let's take a look.
Yeah.
What does it do?
What does it do?
So
and this is live, right? We're just figuring this out.
So let's put a breakpoint.
Now, it's not going to show the debug, so we'll have to...
No, but we'll set a breakpoint.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So, set a breakpoint. And we're going to get some range.
See it flashed your...
Yeah, I think it might have been the difference between maybe a window versus a monitor or something. I don't know. So some range.
Okay.
Unfortunately, that environment, it's really small there, but maybe on screen you can see end is set to hat 4.
Yeah, it says hat 4, right?
And the reason why is because end, this is a thing too. So let's just show you some. I'm going to have to close this. So system.range is one of the types that's getting implemented here. But there is another new type in .NET, and if I say somerange.end, we're going to see what it is.
Yeah.
It's system.index.
Right.
There's a second type going on there. So some index is being rendered
it's
as
not
hat
constant
4
or whatever. Yeah.
Value of 4 is from end is true. So there's a little
so
member variable
help
in there. Yeah.
Right. That's cool.
Is from end, and then the implementation is what makes the rest of it.
Right.
And you can actually write your own implementations that are compatible. So I think what you do is I'm not 100% sure how it works. I didn't totally read all the documentation, but I think you can write implementations that are range and index compatible, and then people could use these operators on your own custom stuff.
Yeah, I think I've seen samples like that too.
Yeah. So ranges. I noticed that they got a lot of. I mean, you can do fun stuff like this, like say implicitly start from the beginning.
Right.
You can do. Obviously, so this is one. You've always been able to do this. That's obvious. We know what that is.
Right.
You can do this too. Because that's
from the end. Because that's an index.
Yeah, it's an index.
Yeah, you don't need the whole range. You're using the index. Now, here's the thing, right? So maybe I'm an old guy. I've been doing this a while,
right?
So this stuff looks different to me. Like my instinct is if I was writing that code, I would have to put a comment above it saying, explaining what it is.
Yeah.
But I don't do that with Lambda. Again, in time, these things become part of our DNA.
This initializer, this actually was here day one. This kind of initializer, if I remember correctly. But other property initializers, object property initializers, they weren't there. And you still run into developers who say, what the heck is this doing?
Well, but I think that in some of these cases, again, this is an opinion-based thing. My opinion's usually right, but some things, whether they're new or not, look like what you think they're gonna do, right? And I think you get that a lot with some of these initializers, right? Like they look like what they're gonna do.
Yeah.
But the hat too, there's nothing intuitive about that. Let's be honest. I'm not saying it's wrong, but there's nothing intuitive about it unless it's a construct that they got from another language or something like that.
Which I'm glad someone in the audience pointed out because I didn't know the answer to this. I said, I know that Python has ranges and maybe they took some inspiration from this. And his question was like, well, why didn't they just use Python syntax? And I said,
so it's not
thank
Python.
you for answering that question because I don't know the answer to that.
Right.
So,
I thought I think we'll get used to these things.
So we had the hat.
Yeah, the hat. Yeah, you got a whole list of stuff here.
We used it on a string. The async stream stuff, I think, is for fans of yield return.
So that's a place I'm going to be honest.
Not something you use.
I just don't use yield. I've never really been comfortable with that, and that's a little embarrassing. I'd like to say I'm a better developer, but like that's not a feature I've really been comfortable with.
Well, I think some of it comes down to what are you implementing, and
Right.
if you're implementing a data access layer, then being able to generate a stream of results makes sense. If you're even implementing a tracker for mouse movement, that's a stream of data.
Sure.
So you might use yield return, and then you're saying, well, I don't want to use yield return because now, well, actually, I'm sure some folks in the audience would say, why aren't you using RX, the RX
sure,
library
okay,
and observables, which sounds like that would be a great show. But now you're saying to me, well, you can't do it asynchronously, so your code has to sit and wait on the stream to complete.
Yeah.
And what if the stream never completes? Which is, I think, the point of observables. They could be infinite streams, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, what did we talk about here that was kind of interesting? The implicitly scoped using statement, I thought, it doesn't pack a punch.
Right.
Because when you really think about it, it's not doing, let's see, is this one of the ones where I copied the whole thing?
You know
It
what?
is.
So when you demoed that, right? And I don't know
Yeah.
if you want to show an example. This
Yep.
is it here, right? So on the
This
screen.
is how it looks today.
So
this could be database access.
right.
It could be anything where we've been using
Sure.
we have been using
Right.
for almost 20 years
Right.
in this kind of scenario.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if you can switch it like while we're talking here,
Yep,
but
absolutely.
you know what? So it's one of those features where I thought like, meh, like maybe it's not. But the when I looked at it, when you look at the after, which you're kindly generating for us here, it really gives you what I like is clean code, right? It is definitely easier to read this way, right? You have less nesting, less indenting and things like that. You have the 3 lines of code that matter to you, and it implicitly, basically, that might not always work, right? In other words,
It might
you
not be what you always wanted.
want this because maybe there's a lot more code coming after.
Maybe reader lives too long.
But even then, right? Like it's probably not that long. And so I really like this because the reader is just going to go out of scope at the end of the method, right? At the bottom curly bracket, it goes out of scope, and it's like having the using statement. And I actually really love this. Like,
Okay.
I didn't know I was going to love it. I didn't really think about it that way, and that's what I like about some of these features. It's like,
Have you ever used this one, which is not a C# 8 feature? At least I don't believe it is. This one, where now, if I say using static up top, I do
Okay.
not have to.
I
Did I get that
forgot
right?
about that.
Oh, did I not get
I don't
that
know.
right?
Well, I don't know, but I've seen that in a demo, and I always forget about it. It's one of those ones like
I think it's because I need
system.console. Let's see
There
if you
it
got it
is.
right.
There.
Look at this guy on the fly.
So
Do we have sound effects? You need
No.
like sound effects
Yeah,
for
we don't have
right?
a soundboard. No.
Yeah, that's like one of those great little things that like I just don't think about. Like
We've been writing
features.
console.writeline for a very long time.
Right. Exactly.
And here's another one that maybe we've been writing for a very long time that we're just like, what do I want to? And actually, I'm not even sure how you would use this. Like, it can only be used for static methods. So string.empty is a static method. I'm not sure that I want. Do I really want to say
Empty?
a string something equals string.empty? Okay, that's the classic way.
Okay.
Do I? And then I guess I use the keyword. Which some people, there's a whole blog post about this, by the way, and
There's many blog posts.
Somebody pointed out that his reasoning was that you can't possibly get wrong what this is. This is always system.string, but that if this isn't scoped correctly, it could be something else. I suppose.
So it's the same. It's not that different than int versus like int 64,
and int 32
right?
and stuff like that.
Int 32, right? And so I was told that what the lowercase ones are is like a shortcut, right? But it could mean the other thing. Like in other words, int means int 32. But I think there's some way, and maybe I'm not explaining this right. Int, right, is the same.
It is
as int 32.
System.int32, right? This
So,
is system.string.
but it's a what's the word I'm looking for? A synonym, right? And there's a reason that they say you're supposed to use. I was told you're supposed to use the synonyms from way back. You're supposed to use that because there's some reason where under certain circumstances it could be something different. Maybe but I'm probably not explaining it right.
The reason is that theoretically, I believe that this is part of the C# standard, not the .NET standard. So the BCL could change
that's
the C# specification, but it doesn't really matter that much, right? has it changed?
No. And I always use lowercase string. Bottom line, that's what I use.
But so check this out. I can say if I say not that I'm
so
not
you can
sure.
do this for anything.
Yeah, it's not just it's not the using system.console feature.
Right.
So now I've said I don't even need to say string.empty. But is that starting to get to be too much? Is it too much? Is it?
Yeah, because now empty looks sort of like a constant or a keyword, or like what is empty?
Who would look at this code and say, I know what that is? Where right line, you probably have more of a prayer.
Right.
Math is another one, right? Isn't there stuff in math?
I imagine there are, yeah, sure.
All these things
right.
are...
So then it comes down to like readability, right? Like, is the juice worth the squeeze? Or maybe that's not the right phrase in this case, but like, does that help your code? I'd say I'd rather have the string.empty because I think that's somewhat misleading. Okay. But
no, it's fair, and that's not a C#8 feature, by the way.
Yeah, I didn't realize you could do it with other things.
The fact that it's still, I don't think it's hit the mainstream, kind of that tells you a little bit there too. Obviously, this was a huge one, and we
Which one is this?
Did I get it all right? I did.
What are you grabbing?
This is nullable reference types.
Yeah. So the more I think about this, at first I hated the name, right? And the more I understand it, I'm not sure the name is as wrong as I thought the name was. You know what I mean? Because it's allowing you to have it changes the whole thing. I kind of feel like I'd like to get to the point where I turn it on and use it. Like at first I thought like, well, that's just silly. Why would I use that? But what are your thoughts? Like, are you looking to use this?
Yes, yeah. I am. I don't know how easy it will be to convince other developers. There's a few schools of thought there. One of them is there are some developers who will argue passionately that null is an important part of programming because sometimes we need to represent that we don't know what we don't know, and I'm totally misstating the argument. I'm sure I'm creating a straw man that I'm going to burn down, which is totally unfair. But I don't feel that way. I very strongly feel that it doesn't, null does not tell us what or why I don't have a value. And the only way that we might remedy that is through documentation that I might have read that might not be accurate, because null could also just be a bug. So even if I go document somewhere, null means that we don't know the value and that we also don't know why we don't know the value. Right. Well, then can I have an enumeration for that or something?
Yeah.
Just call it that type dot unknown value unknown reason, which sounds pretty. We'd have to think about how we want it to look in code. But the point is you do know. You know that you don't know.
Right.
Which I know I'm
I
getting
want to know that I don't
there.
know. Yeah. But see, you can still have null.
But
because you can put back in that. But what I'm saying is you don't lose the ability to have nullable type, and that's what it is. They're basically saying we're going to make it sort of like strict.
You got to tell us.
But if you want it to be nullable, tell us. And I think I like that. I think that's going to lead to, again, haven't put it into play in a full application, but I feel like that's going to lead to better code and less bugs.
Yeah, let me see. Do I have it turned on? I do. And then the first thing that you have to do to make it blow up is you say, okay, obviously this is a little tiny app. It's not a very good example, but let's just say because of lots of work has happened, thousands and millions,
right? Lots of lines in between here.
Of lines happened, and different functions, cats and dogs living together. And what happened was, for some reason, this happened, and then you got to this state, and you're going to pass that in, and the compiler's telling me, hold on a second, hold on. And it'll do it on build, and it'll do it on squiggly. That's what I like to call that.
Squiggly.
And green squiggly, which is what
Design
I like.
Time, basically.
What I like is it's green. I like it's green. It's not a misspelling.
Right.
It's grammar.
Yeah.
So, but it's saying, look, you got two problems here. You are applying null to a type that you swore to me was not nullable because you didn't put the question mark. You told me this wasn't nullable. You said programmer was not nullable, but here you are, null's getting assigned. That's a problem. And then you passed, I have detected that you passed null into a function that didn't buy in to being nullable. He didn't say, yeah, I'll take it. Now I did.
And don't you think that's just going to help you more than it's going to hurt you?
No, I agree. I
you
think
know,
so.
again, every code base is different.
that's
Every
not it.
developer is different. But I don't know, Rich. I think so. You know.
I like it. I'm a big fan. The Static Void podcast had a whole episode about null
Yeah, that's right.
where we talked about it, and I was the one who said like I hate it. I want it to not happen.
It was a good episode, by the way.
Yeah, was it? Did you think so?
I did.
Yeah, I was the one who was just like, I don't want it. I think you got to say what because if you really don't, null should be a bug. Null should be you get a null reference exception. It should be because our code did not do what it was supposed to.
Or you make
do.
it nullable, and then it's not a bug. Then it's just like, well, it's null. Like it can be there. It might blow up, but it's nullable. And
So that's
the best of both worlds.
So we're kind of having we're having the middle name argument, aren't we? Which is some people don't have middle names. Should that be null, or should it be?
The middle
should
name
it be
argument.
Empty string.
that they don't have a middle name? And
Right.
actually,
Some people don't have a last name. Heck, Cher doesn't. I mean,
Which
maybe she
means that
doesn't
I'm
have Cher.
really-
I'm dating myself, right? I should
Woo!
have used Kesha or something. I don't know.
Rihanna.
Rihanna, thank you. Yeah.
is- so what I'm really saying here, though, as well, is that
When your
I need
screen's not up.
I need a
Yeah,
class
that
to
is,
encapsulate this because I'm obsessed with these primitives. That's why I'm passing nulls around. But that's like a whole other show on practices, right? Which I don't always adhere to all the time. Like that's a case where I go, hey, I need a type to represent a name, and then other times I'm like, nah.
This is what I think is good about this part of your show that you're doing now. Is you show examples in the lab today in hands-on, and people tried them out. But there's a bigger conversation that can happen about this, and we could go on for hours, and you could have different guests come in and just talk about nullable. And I bet you would get some really interesting conversations if you just talked about that. For example.
I think that there will be many teams and many code bases and many developers who will fight passionately about turning on nullable enable.
Right.
And some will say we can't turn that on. It's so stupid. We can't do it. This is a waste.
Well, they
of
fight
my
about a lot
time.
of these other features too.
That's
Well,
true. VAR
I've
versus
heard people say,
explicit types, right?
VAR is a whole one, but I mean, I hear people say, well, you can't use lambdas because they're just not readable.
Yeah,
Like,
I don't understand
they're
lambdas.
pretty
And you're like, what are you
readable,
talking about? I love lambdas because after a while,
It's more readable. You just
the
get
first time I admit I used to have to go back to the docs and say, how do I write my lambda again?
No.
And then after a while, I go, okay, I get it. This is
Right.
turning into that.
Right.
That's how I think of lambdas. Is that value is being run through the. We already used washing machine
Right.
on this show. It's being run through the press, and it is being turned into. It's being ironed. It looks like an iron. Looks like an iron. The arrow operator. I'm going to call that. So it's being ironed.
Yeah.
I'm taking two values and I'm ironing them into the final value.
Go along with that.
My dry cleaning.
I mean, I'd like
analogy.
to, I don't know what our time is, right? But one day it would be nice to talk about those switches because I think those switches is a great. What I like about that is again less lines of code. I
Okay.
still think it's pretty readable. I think it reads what it does.
Right.
Like when you're reading it, if you didn't know the language at all, and you came in and you saw one of those things, I think you could intuitively infer what this does.
Yep.
Right.
So here's
Which is
the-
unlike the index and the
So yeah, so I have a switch up there now,
yeah.
Hang on.
and this is a switch that's just all it's really doing is we're just comparing, we're just looking for three strings and then a
Right.
default value.
And this isn't bad code, right?
It's not
There's no-
bad.
I'm not saying
We've
this
been writing
isn't
that code
readable.
for a long time.
Oh yeah,
It's very C based,
sure.
right?
Yep.
And that's what I had to do. And then the result, which actually we got help from folks.
Well,
in
how
the
cool was
audience.
that?
That was cool.
I wanted to touch about that.
That
I
I'm
put that
very
on my
happy
notes.
about.
I knew. So
Yeah.
what we're talking about is that when Chris was doing his talk and he was doing a demo, there's some audience suggestions,
Mhm.
right? And he changed it on the fly, which
Yep.
is sort of the model of this sort of streaming programming that like Jeff Fritz does, and
Yep.
you do some of as well. It's like kind of cool. Let's try that.
No, I was glad.
Yeah,
I was
I
really
liked
glad.
it. It's like
Because what I
community
liked
programming.
is I liked that their example got closer to, well, not closer, did turn this into an expression where I still had a two-step process.
Right.
And I wasn't happy with that. But you're writing the lab and you kind of say like, well, I guess I'm done. So here's the classic switch statement where I was basically taking the result of the switch, and as part of the switch, I was more statements to append it.
Right.
And it all became one expression, which is switch based on programmer.language. Here are your choices. If
Right.
you don't have the answer, then go to default. You don't have break anymore.
Because break always felt like
You're always putting it
What
in
am I
there
doing?
because it
Yeah,
was
yeah.
a C.
Well, I guess
That's
you could
why.
fall through, and I guess there's no more fall through.
Well,
but
you know
maybe
what,
there is.
though?
I think there is a fall
Here's
through,
the
right?
thing. Watch this. Yeah, let's see what you think. Because as I was working on this, I intentionally did that. And look what the language did. Is it going to do it? Yes. Watch this.
Yeah. Right.
Cannot fall through.
Right.
So why do we have break again?
Well, yeah. I thought there was a way that you can
might
fall through under certain circumstances.
might
I'm
be.
trying to remember.
Was
Well, I
it
think you
continue?
could put two lines together. I think you could put case C sharp and case VB next to each other.
You can put them one line under each
Oh.
other,
That's what I'm saying.
like
right?
31 and 32.
So
Yeah.
like this, right?
Yeah, that you can do, and I don't know how you would express that in the. Well, there's a lot of probably good ways you could express that in the other thing.
Yeah, I mean, I've
there was-
typically done that. Like if you've got an uppercase, lowercase, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, sure. It's an example. So what was I going to say though? So in the
This-
example that you rewrote it, I think though what I would say, if you don't mind my
Here.
criticism,
No,
of,
I
yeah,
didn't.
did you
I'll
go the
get
wrong
it.
direction? There it is.
There it is.
So I think it would be cleaner if you took the return out and set it as a variable. I think it showed like from a demonstration.
Oh yeah.
Your code is clean because you're going to just return that value, right?
Let's do this again.
But
I'll get that set up. I'll get it set up.
This is the
Go
control
ahead.
X, the control Z, right? How many? What are you going to do here?
No, I'm just putting the example back together.
Oh. So this is just such a clean way of coding, right? I mean, I think it really looks like what it is. Like, I don't think it's too hard to understand that.
So let's think about that for a second. Now watch this. Watch this. Tell me what you think of this, because this where it was like this two-step process. Create part of the message, go through the switch to add more to it, and then return became this.
Right.
More of a one-step process
Sure.
of I've already got part of the string, just add on the result of the switch, and it's one big expression. Okay, but you're saying like the return. I agree with you that the return started to give the impression to the audience that that was part of switch expression.
That's what I wanted to express.
And I appreciated that even the other gentleman, that helped me realize like, yeah, we got to make that clear that it's the same thing to say this. Right?
Yeah, and
same
then
thing.
return it again at the end or
Well,
something
hold
like
on.
that. Right, yeah.
Hold on. We have expression bodied members.
Okay.
Whoops. We have expression bodied members,
Yeah,
which look
we
like
do.
this. And I don't,
See.
I think, let me try to clean it up. No, it didn't.
And I don't write these a lot, honestly. Like it hasn't become part of my like coding DNA. Maybe that's because I don't write as much code as I used to, which is a sad.
You're like, that's a different show.
Yeah, that's a different show. That's a
Did I
different
get
show.
that
I'm like
right?
Mr. Azure now. You know, all Azure these days. Let's see. It's hard because the.
What I'm
curly-
wondering is I might not need the curly
Whoa.
brace. Yep, I do not need it.
So let's see.
There it
about
is.
This.
This
Okay.
is an expression now.
Right now. That's cool.
This
That's
is an
really
expression.
cool.
Doesn't, and now see, that feels like a lambda, right? Because implicit return.
Right.
So we're saying that if you pass a programmer into a method called choose certification, you run it on the ironing board, and you get back.
Yeah.
You chose plus the switch expression. You chose .NET certification or whatever.
Right.
And this is expression bodied members. And I will admit, people look at that, and even some of the audience said like, "Oh, you put it back to the right way."
So I know.
But I'm becoming a fan of these, and the
well,
reason
it's
why,
clean, you know, it's yeah.
the reason why is the more you try to force yourself to write expressions, the less multi-statement functions you write.
Right.
And
Single
your functions are now
responsibility,
returning
yeah, right.
one thing, and they're becoming pure.
Mm-hmm.
You're starting to write pure functions, which are easy to test. And then eventually Stashu, who is sitting in the back, will say, well, then you should just be using F#.
Of course. Yeah. Now I gotta pull the
This
old
looks
man.
a little like F#, by the way.
I gotta pull my old man card here. Get off my lawn.
Yeah.
I don't like the underscore, that default character. Like they could have done something better. for
Clearly
that.
inspired by F#.
Yeah. Well, I don't like it.
I'm
voting no. I'm voting no on that one.
Also used in other languages like Elixir.
Good for them.
This is not that far away from a match expression in F#, which I can't write for you on the fly.
Come on, give it a try.
Maybe someday. Maybe someday I would be able to.
So but let me ask you, what do you think? Would you rather it said default there or something like a keyword?
No, and the reason why, and this is totally unfair, because I've already dabbled in F#
Right.
and Elixir. So to me, I'm like, and other languages too, use that as the, it really means I don't care.
Yeah, so
That's used in other places, by the way. We did not get to everything in patterns.
Right.
There are some parts of patterns which you should definitely check out. Scott Case Talk, where, um, I don't even know if I have one that can be turned into the example. But
But before you switch away from
yeah, I'm
this,
not
right?
going to.
What I
don't
think
I
is
I don't-
going back to what I was saying earlier about the implication of what this means. A developer who's maybe not familiar with the syntax, you look at that and you get it. Oh, I bet this means if C# do this, if
Right.
VB do that. Underscore, like a question mark to me would be more like if I don't know what it is, that would be better than the underscore. I just now again,
Now,
it's
we
one of
use
those,
question
but it's
mark
one of
for a
those
lot of
arguments.
things,
It's
but
one of
yeah.
those arguments that I'm making today, and in a year from now, it becomes
like,
a
you
moot
got used
point
to it,
because
yeah.
you just get used to it, and I get it. But get off my lawn.
So there's a pattern that we didn't talk about tonight, where as part of deconstructing a larger object, that deconstruction syntax that I briefly touched on, because it's not C#
that stuff's
8.
crazy.
It's not C#
Yeah.
8 syntax. That's
Right.
We have it already.
Mhm.
It's just who's using it,
Who's using it?
including me.
Yeah.
But as part of that deconstruction syntax, you can say, okay, I know that I get 3 parameters, but I only care about the third one. So you can say blank blank, and then the third variable, because you're like, I don't care about the other 2.
Right.
So that's another thing that comes from other languages too. So yeah, interesting. It certainly turned more code into less code, and then when you throw this as the icing on the cake to me,
That's cool. That's
you're gonna
that's
start
pretty
doing
neat.
this, man. You're gonna start doing it.
Well, if I got to write code, I would do it.
What turned me on to this was a Pluralsight course. I believe the gentleman's name's Goran Horvat, and I think it's called Making Your .NET Code More Functional. It might be the other course that's called Making Your .NET Code More Object-Oriented. He has 2. Sounds weird,
Right.
different sides of the teeter-totter, but he really becomes passionate about, like, hey, here are benefits to making your code more functional, and here's your benefits to making your code more object-oriented. I liked both of those courses, by the way. I'm not
That's cool.
pitching the guy. If you happen to have Pluralsight, it was brilliant stuff. So that's kind of it, right?
I think an important part of this, and you touched upon this at the beginning of your talk, is that it's the .NET framework versus .NET Core
Oh yeah.
conversation, right?
Mhm.
I said it. I don't know if it was on this show, but I've been saying, like I was a holdout to .NET Core. We don't do a lot of cross-platform stuff. It's not necessarily important to what we're doing at work, right? So I was stay with framework. Why not, right? But now that the message is out that says these features are in .NET Core and these features are not in the full framework, it's time. It's time to get on, and so we're starting. And I'm advising people to start using .NET Core, and it's certainly mature enough as well, which is another factor. Like did I need to be the first one on the .NET Core bandwagon?
Right.
So what do you think? I mean, about that? That.
I think that you hit a lot of the key point. Is that it wasn't something anyone could predict, but if you took .NET Core 1, you were in for some pain going to .NET Core 2, because everyone, including the team, the community, realized we made some whoppers, things we shouldn't have done, things that could have been simpler, ideas that didn't work out the way we thought they would. Let's fix them for 2. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
2, I think, has made even the 2 to 2.1 to 2.2 transition has not been massive upheaval. 3.0, little more of the same. We're still seeing the same frame. We're still configuring services the same way. We're still everything not changing too much, except that what I do think is happening is we're beginning to care less about some of the stuff that made .NET Core confusing, like use MVC. Well, what does that thing do? Does it mean I get to do MVC? No, it means you get to do everything. Well, then what do I need to use MVC for? And we're getting clearer code that will express your content. I need controllers. I need controllers with views. I need pages. You're going to say that in your code. I think those are all good things. But the nice thing about that you going from 2.1 to 3.0 is not going to be that painful. That's not a
right.
That's not like a we blew up the whole framework, right? That's just maturity. And then we see, so is now the time? I think the answer to that question is kind of what kind of lifecycle support can you afford? And this is the hard part. If you go ahead and commit to .NET 2.1, you are only guaranteed LTS support. I shouldn't say the word only. That's not really very nice. You're guaranteed LTS support until like the fall of 2021. It could go beyond that. They might go beyond that. They're just saying, we're giving you minimum 3 years. When .NET Core 3.1 LTSs in November of this year, according to the timeline, same thing, 3 years. If you built a .NET 4.8 framework application today, .NET 4.8 is a component of Windows Server 2019. You're set until 2029 in terms of just support. Just support. I'm not talking about anything else. Just support. 2029, 2021, 2029, 2022. Those are big numbers for teams that say, I don't know if I can afford to move that often. We want to put this code out there and then go do something else. Like, our development team doesn't just own one app that we constantly iterate on. That's all we do is we iterate on. We ship, and then we hope that we can back away.
Mm-hmm.
And I know other stuff too. Yeah, and that's not all development teams are that way. Some own a product. Some teams are like project teams. Like, oh, we got the project and it's out there. Yeah, we documented how it works so that way we can all sleep on Saturday when they need to build another server. Great. But if you're telling me in 3 years I got to put this much time into porting, I don't have that kind of time because I'm on another project.
Right. We don't have time.
So does that mean .NET Framework 4.8 is good till 2029? Pure speculation on my part. I think the answer is no, because I think another Windows server is going to come out. Let's call it, just to make it up, let's call it 2022, and it's going to include
not
Framework
an official name?
No, I'm not. I'm making this up.
Right.
I'm making it all up, and I don't work for anybody, right?
You don't work for anybody?
I don't work for Microsoft. I make it very clear that you aren't hearing from Microsoft
right.
when I say that, right? You are not hearing. This is just me spouting off. But let's see. I don't know. Server 2012, 2016, 2019, 2022, right. And then 2022 includes 4.8, and boom, 2032 is the new end of support date. Unless they say, 2022 is not going to get 10 years of support. Like, those kinds of things could happen.
So, but summarize that, because you just said a lot of numbers, a lot of dates. So, what do you mean by that? What are you recommending?
That you stay on .NET Framework.
Yeah, like, so translate that a little bit. Simplify that.
That's hard, because if you stay on it, it means it's not even just about features. It's about the innovation. For example, a lot of developers out there don't know how important it is to use HTTP client correctly. Like, for example, did you know, and this is painful, this is painful. We talked about using tonight, and we talked about the data classes, and you've got to dispose those things. And that was beaten into us.
We were supposed to
dispose it all.
Especially something that might have that
unmanaged resources.
Right.
Yeah. Guess what? HTTP client derives from iDisposable for a different reason. It implements iDisposable, and you should not be disposing.
Not dispose it. I know.
It is reentrant.
This is the new
It's reentrant. You should use one of them for your application, and so much so that in .NET Core 2.1, I think it's 2.1, it might be 2.2, I could be wrong, we got an HTTP client factory to help us here. We're not getting that in 4.8.
Right.
We're not getting that in Framework. So there's a piece of innovation. I'm not just talking about like, new features. It's like, that helps you.
Innovation, right. That there's a big difference between sugar and real features.
That helps you do the right thing. And being helped to do the right thing is great. But what if I look at the current timelines and say, I need a little bit more? Does that mean you're waiting until .NET 6, which is the first on the .NET schedule, planned to be an LTS release in 2021 with 4-year support, which is just, the 4 years number is not on any slide that I've seen. I heard it out of Scott Hunter's mouth in a couple talks. So you can, I haven't seen it written. I've been looking. I've been very passionately looking for it in words, but I heard him say it, so I've been kind of taking it. That's 2 years to wait.
Yeah, you're very focused, and I'm not saying this is wrong, but you're always. We've had conversations before about this.
Guess where that came from? It came from the role that I'm in.
Yeah.
Right, and so I'll be honest, like, that's not always the first thing that crosses my mind. Like, I'm not thinking about that. I'm thinking innovation. These are where the features are.
Yep.
And it's mature. It's not, V1.
I became very informed by starting to work with product teams that said, we really do build a project and we want to walk away from it, and we want to walk away from it for a long time.
Right.
And the fact is we're gonna have
most
to tell
companies
them.
will do that. They'll walk away from it. It's running.
They'll walk away from it anyway.
Well, it's running. I'm not saying that we do that where I work.
But I think what is changing for all of us, including those developers, is that 10 years is not reasonable anymore. There's no other platform that does it.
True.
Nobody else does it.
Right.
I'm pretty sure I'm right about that. If I'm wrong, I'd love to hear from you.
I mean, think of some of the things if you're doing NPM and Node
God,
and
just
using
Node,
those kind of
it's-
packages. I mean,
They're not supported for 10 years, right?
You
Your
might be
JavaScript libraries might not be supported.
You might be
next week.
supported Saturday. Yeah,
Right.
I mean, I don't want to make fun of NPM. I
no,
think it's
no,
a great
there's some
ecosystem,
great
right?
innovation and all kinds of great applications that
know,
are being built with those. But
The only one I could think of that might have similar timelines is Java, and I don't want to speak to Java. I'm not a Java expert, but I think that they've begun to say take point release, or we want you to pay for support, which is unheard of for Java. I might have that wrong, and I'm not here to compare Java. I don't care about that. That doesn't matter to me. But what does matter is that I think this idea that you won't have to at least work on your code, ever, is going away.
Oh, sure.
Like to just say like I can throw it out and I don't have to care anymore. Like really, I don't know that that's realistic because what's changed in the last 20 years? Well, for one thing, speed of internet and security.
yeah.
Something happens in the security world that requires you to make changes. What if TLS 1.2 was broken next week?
Oh, yeah.
What if next week they said, you all got to get to TLS 1.3? Okay, did I hard code that in any of my applications?
Hopefully we learned the first time we hard coded it.
Right.
And the second
Well,
time we hard coded it.
Microsoft did.
Right.
That's
right.
why,
Yeah.
and that's for everybody. .NET 4.7, get to it because you should not be
TLS,
hard
yeah.
coding TLS. And .NET Framework 4.7 and above will just do the right thing.
Yeah.
So
Good point. You see, you got a lot of these deep.
you know what they come
yeah.
from? They come from teams with
pain.
legacy code.
They come from pain.
And legacy code, it's so interesting to have to. I don't want to say that I support it, but to feel the miles they're walking in, and they're saying, we don't even remember what we did, but
Right.
something's wrong now. Can you help us? And that's tough.
So just throwing it out there, I mean, how much do you think that the framework and kind of the path that things are heading down, that you're going to be owning that code a little bit more? Maybe because you're putting more features into it, but certainly you need to put some kind of an update because things are changing all the time. How much do you think that kind of ties in or is a little bit impacted or supported by the fact of all of the DevOps processes that are out there?
Yep.
Not just Azure DevOps, but there are a number of different ways that you can do DevOps.
You said owning your code. .NET Core and Beyond developers own the version too,
Okay.
which we didn't own in Framework technically. We just let the server teams upgrade Framework. Oh heck, we let Windows Update do it if we were at home.
Yeah.
Just one day 4.8 shows up on my machine and I'm upgraded. Yay. We don't own that in Core. The developer owns it again.
Yeah, I feel like we've had this conversation,
Yeah.
maybe, right? But yeah, so what happens when there's a security patch to Core or something like that? Then is it on us now as developers to now redeploy our application? I think we had this conversation.
Might
right?
be.
But it might be.
The might be of it is if you're container based, yes, absolutely.
Sure.
Okay.
That's a given because
Well,
we probably need to do a good show on containers and why I just said that,
Right.
and why that was so easy for us to go like, oh yeah, because containers they're boxes, they're sealed up tight in packing tape, and you never can touch them.
Right.
But
talk about non-containers.
But
How does it-
non-containers,
Yeah.
right? You can ship .NET Core. You can have a shared framework on a server. You can do that. And if your organization sets that world up, you are working towards a world of, I'm going to call them IT. We all probably have different names for the department. That group is going to keep servers up to date. They better know that that's their job because Windows Update's not doing it for them.
Right.
And they were used to Windows Update doing it for them.
Sure.
Yeah.
So now you've got to get the shared framework up to date. But then what if a development team comes along and says like, shared framework.
Right.
I can't wait for those guys to give me
Right.
.NET Core 3. I'm going to do
I'm
it.
just
And
gonna
then you
drop
do
in
it,
my app.
and then you go to sleep because you're not paying attention to the blog posts
Yeah.
that say .NET 3.0 has an important update that you need to ship. And you're just, I'm having pizza. I'm not paying attention. I never had to pay attention before.
It's a whole new thing. And you talk about supporting applications or just the idea of taking an application and saying, well, let's just leave it out there, for 10 years or something like that.
We're not going to touch it.
But that in itself is technical debt,
Yes.
right?
Right.
It might be running fine,
Right.
but, and we've all been there, someone says, well, it broke, or we want to add a feature to it. I know it's been 10 years, we want to add a feature to it. And everybody goes, we don't know how this thing works, right? And so
I don't even know how to build a server.
obligation?
I don't even know how to build a server so I can develop on it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what's our obligation there? This is a good conversation to have, and maybe we should take note of these ideas for conversations. But
They are captured in video.
oh,
Just
wow.
going back in.
Wow, that's so
That's
cool.
such a
amazing.
concept, right?
Wow.
YouTube.com/Billy DOTNET.
Yeah,
Andy, you just
wow.
watch it all.
So, what's our obligation as developers to say we should listen, as a developer, I always would love to say, oh, that app's been around for a couple of years. Let's rewrite it. Let's make it new again.
Sure.
That's fun. But that's expensive, right? And so how do we balance all that with supported versions of .NET and letting just an application go stale and no one's familiar with it and all this kind of stuff, and how it all works together it's complicated. And it's changing. It's not what it used to be. And what I was going to say earlier when we were talking about like 10-year lifespan, 10 years from now, we might not, we didn't know about containers 10 years ago, or I don't know, maybe some people did. I don't think I did 10 years ago, right? So what won't we, who knows how different the landscape will be.
Right.
Sure.
So maybe it doesn't matter that's not supported for 10 years because everything else will be new anyway.
Well, I think what's going to matter is that the whole concept of I can write software is a project that I write and ship is changing. Look
Right.
at Windows.
Okay.
We are not hearing about, and again, I don't know. We are not hearing about a Windows 11, and shouldn't we by now? Like in the world of the way things used to work.
Yeah, right.
But now I even get a thing that pops up on my machine that says Windows is a service and you need to let us keep updating you, right? And twice a year, a new version of Windows drops on my machine. But do I even know that's happening? I do because I'm super plugged in.
Right.
Does my family know?
Right.
Does my family know?
Right.
Because it'll update in the middle of the night.
Yep.
And they've got the creators up.
And it used to be kind of painful, but now it seems to be pretty. They wake up and then they get a message that says like, "Welcome to the spring thingy-mabobber," and you go, "Awesome! Well, I don't know what that is." X.
It restarts your apps and everything anyway.
Yeah,
nowadays.
and then
So
you're
you don't
angry.
even know
You're already
something
upset
happened,
about
right.
that. So
Yeah.
in any case, I think in a lot of ways that software. So part of it is that your design is not future-proof. To say we ship these apps that just sort of sit stale. No, I think we're all shipping. If we're doing it modern and being responsible, we're probably shipping services with front ends that interact with services, and those services are being iterated on. We are iterating on those services. And sure, I might get lucky and ship a dumb front end over to this device here, and I don't have to touch it for a few months. But then you know what's going to happen, right? This device is going to change.
Yeah.
So I got to ship another dumb front end, and I got to iterate on these services. And I think that's
that might keep it fresh. Like sort of you're forced to freshen it because the device goes away.
Right.
But Windows isn't going to change. I mean, we build browser applications, right? And that's not going to change as often as you're right about the
in
device
general,
thing, right?
and even with the devices, I'm being a little. You can build a browser app that will stand for a while.
Yeah.
Because the browser vendors are in the business of not breaking you.
Right.
Hopefully.
And you've got that separation, right? You're building something in the browser side for your visualization. You've got all those other services that you mentioned that you're updating. And
browsers talking to services. You're iterating on the services. Hopefully, and this is one of the things Rich and I have done, or we're trying to do. We're learning how to do for everybody.
Yeah.
We're trying to figure out how to do it. Is we had this conversation. We said, what's the first thing we do when we start an app? And you know what we did? We started a GitHub repo. We so far in our 2 episodes of working on this project for Philly.net, we have written no code because we are working on the CI/CD.
And we spent 2 hours talking about that.
Yeah, we're getting that done first.
Yep.
So that way, when we write the code, the project it's gonna it'll be tested, deployed, whatever.
If you don't do it on day one, you don't do it.
It's never gonna
happen. And that's the
right?
thing, right?
It's not gonna happen.
Developers will look at that, and I had a conversation with one of my colleagues in the office yesterday. Similar thing. Yeah, we have all the CI/CD stuff up front, but and they talk about the value of doing that. And when it comes down to making those changes, you're not saying, "Give me those files, I will integrate it to what I have, and I will just do this right-click, push, publish at a studio into whatever environment I'm pushing this code.
saying
I know,
right-click
right?
push publish.
Right-click publish. That sounds like a show. I'm kidding.
But it's great that you guys are doing it that way, right? Because
Yeah.
it will help you in the long run. It feels like it slows you down, right? But it doesn't.
It's
right?
like technical debt, right?
It's
You're
technical debt.
you're making sure you don't have that technical debt for your deployment.
Here's a conversation I had with developers today. Similar, and I've never said this before, like to them. I hadn't said this, but as we were talking about it, I was using the same logic, and we were talking about the tail end, if you want to call it, of DevOps, right? Metrics and things like that, right? And they're feeding back, right? Getting that, that's that whole loop thing, right? We want to get the metrics. And they said, well, what kind of metrics do we want to start to gather? We want to start to focus on that. I was really psyched that the developers brought it up. They're like, and the lead as well. But they brought it up. But I said, we should treat that the same way. It's really easy to say, let's build the app and get it working. We're going to put these metrics in later, right? But those metrics, a lot of them, depending on what you're collecting, will probably help you in your debugging and your developing and figuring out what's working right and what's not working right. But if you don't put it in as you go,
right?
Production metrics on day one is what you're saying.
No, I'm saying day negative one.
Day
like
zero.
Day zero, like
Which-
at development time.
When you're thinking about the
Which
feature,
we're
what
talking
have
about too, right?
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'll tell you, I don't know when we're gonna write any code because get the CI/CD going.
This is like my whole
and
job
then say,
now.
let's get Azure Monitor
all this
going
kind of
so that
stuff.
we know when it breaks.
App insights to
App
understand the
insights.
telemetry of your
Key
what's
vault,
going on.
things like that.
Absolutely,
Yeah. I just learned about that today. My first time did some Key Vault stuff.
What are you using Key Vault in? Can you just share
Azure
a little
Key
bit?
Vault. Is that what you?
No, I'm sorry. No, like
Oh,
what part of the is it like for the front end of the application?
This is
Talk to
for
the data, or
well, it's a couple things, and so we are connecting from writing this. This is one web app. This is one of the first things we're taking that we're moving to Azure, and we just did our big switch over, and we're getting ready to start putting everything in Azure. So this is a small application. It actually is a simple web app that allows some of our users to basically use Azure DevOps without using Azure DevOps, right?
Okay.
And the reason for that is these are certain class of business users. We don't want to get them all busy with the thing. And the feature is work items, right? So they need to submit certain kind of suggestions, feature requests. And so we built a web app that allows them to type in a couple fields, and in the covers it creates a user story.
is that because of the user interface, or is that because of getting them access from their account to access into
No,
that
it's
project?
a user interface thing.
Okay,
And
fair enough.
again, these are people that do this a couple of times a year.
Mhm.
There's a lot of them. It's worth building the app. Right?
Yeah.
But
The only reason I bring up that distinction is, and many people, I'm sure you know, but other people
Yeah.
may not, that there is a stakeholder account.
yes,
And that's
it's
all
great.
that
Oh my
person
God, we have a
can-
lot of stakeholder accounts,
Yep. Okay,
and we
so you
use
already did.
those.
Cool.
We have plenty of stakeholders. This is sort of beyond stakeholder. Like we
Yep.
just need that simple. It's I think there's 4 fields in the UI. You know what I mean? It's just
Yep.
really simplified down. So the bottom line is it needs a key to connect to the Azure DevOps service.
Okay.
And so that key is we wanted that in the vault.
Yep.
Right. Well, I thought I got into an endless loop today, right? And I sent somebody this funny animated GIF about it, because what I wanted to do, and again, it's first time today and successful. I'm really happy about it. Then I thought, well, I'm going to go to Azure Key Vault. I need a key to get to Key Vault. So where do I put that key? And that felt really wrong to me.
Yeah.
Until I discovered that you don't really need to do that.
No.
Because, well, it wasn't the key to the Key Vault. It was the key to, first I thought I had to connect to, and I don't know this well enough to explain it really good for the show, right? But we had to connect to Azure Active Directory
Yep.
in order to connect to the Key Vault and all that. And then I realized that I could sort of register the app in a smarter way.
Yeah.
So that when it runs, it just can connect to Key Vault. And I'm like, oh, this is beautiful.
So using, and I'm gonna see if this is the path you went down, because I've done something similar recently, something called a managed service identity for
Yes,
your app
MSI.
service.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's right. Yep.
So what that does essentially gives your app, makes it look like a user in your
Right.
Azure Active Directory, and then
right.
you can now, because it looks like a user, give it access to certain components inside of Azure. In this case,
Exactly.
Key Vault.
right? And stuff really
And the
starts
nice
to tie
thing is
together really
you don't
nicely.
have to store any credentials, which
No
is great.
credentials, right?
And it's nothing to do with your code. Nothing's going in source control. This is all environment, which I
Right.
love.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I do a lot of on-prem, and forever teams have been building. I don't know what you call it, but user accounts that aren't people.
Oh, sure.
You might call them a service
Service
account.
account, yeah.
Service accounts,
Okay,
right.
that's not a real term. I
Right.
found out, but it's what a lot of us call it. Is we'll make this account, and it's this dummy account. You give it if you do the right thing and give it the right privileges, but the problem is credentials, right?
Mhm.
And then
so,
everybody's passing that pass. And then
I know,
right. And then how often do you find people say, "Oh, I'll just use that same credentials in a different app."
I know.
And then things are
And
broken.
since
So
Windows
this is
Server 2012, Microsoft has had group managed service accounts, which are the on-premise version of these.
Oh, okay.
And I'm just like shouting from the mountaintops, "Oh
Right.
my gosh, where have these things been? Why aren't we using
great.
these?"
Yep.
So, because I think that's a use case for on-prem, but I was inspired to look into them because of managed service identities. I said, now how is this not a thing in Windows, like on server? And it's
Yeah.
like, well, here it is. It's here. It's
Yeah.
been here. Oh my gosh.
I'd
That's
like to
pretty
do
cool.
a more in-depth talk. I think this is a good topic, maybe for even me to do, like at
Yeah.
Philly.net.
Yeah.
But the simple part of the story is, I didn't know this stuff yesterday,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
I had to read some articles. There were some complications because this app is a little older, and it's not a .NET Core application, and so it actually took me a while to find some samples, but not too long. I'm going to put together a blog post about it,
Nice.
and it's pretty cool. Now the place where I struggle with so many of these things right now, I got to think, what's the best practice with Key Vault? Do I have a Key Vault for each application? Do I use Key Vaults for environments? Right? Like, how do I break this up? How do I get shared keys? What I might want to have that maybe your app uses the same one as mine, but not usually, right? So
Okay.
every app needs its own Key
But
Vault.
then some
I think.
apps there needs to be a separation.
Yeah, and certainly some environments
Yeah.
there needs to be a separation, right? And so that's something I need to try to figure out.
Yeah, I know. In the apps, I mean, it becomes an interesting discussion around where your services lie and what makes the most sense, right? I know for a specific application that we wrote had a different default instance for each environment. That's
Yep.
and that part of that was because we had a different service in depth and
Sure,
prod,
yeah,
and
yeah,
each one of
right.
those had their own identity that talked to the service.
Yes.
Where
And you don't have to change the key name.
no,
If the key name is like connection string, it's not dev connection string, prod connect,
yes,
because the vault is different. The value is, the key is the same, right?
yeah, absolutely, and
I like that.
that worked out well, and it worked out great going from environment to environment. Where you might want to coalesce some of those is if you have shared services. Your keys to your connect strings to your SQL environment. Maybe they all reside in a central key store.
But then is everyone using the same connection string?
Depends on the data.
Yeah, and you get into all like certain permissions that you want this app to have and that
Yeah,
app to
that's
have.
true.
But it sounds like it's not that big a deal until you say, well, we have 150 applications
Right.
times sys-test, QA, UAT, production, plus whatever things we have. Let's just say there's 4. So we have, what did I say? How many applications?
You said 150.
150,
So up to 600 of these things.
600 key vaults. Like,
Yeah.
that doesn't seem like a good idea.
No.
So we have to figure out strategies for some of these things, and I think that's going to be different for each company, each team.
Yeah.
One
quick thing around Key Vault.
Yeah.
Because that would be a really awesome topic to talk about and drill deeper on that. But just curious, because I just found about this feature recently as well, in that the app services in Azure, you have your application set.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you would typically, like the old web.config, right?
Sure,
And the app settings in .NET Core. But when you go to talk to Key Vault, what we were doing, or what I did in previous app, was I actually put the NuGet package that knew how to talk to Key Vault. I made the connection, and I was able to, understand what my secret value was and all that.
Yeah.
You can actually now just say at Microsoft.keyvalue or Key Vault, open parentheses, the URI to your resource in the app set.
Like,
I don't have to have
you
anything
replace it
right.
with the URI for that key.
Yes.
For that, yeah.
But I don't have to have anything in my code that understands that. It does.
That's
My
really
code
cool.
sees it as an app setting as opposed to
Right.
seeing it as a Key Vault value.
And I thought that I was going to be able to do that, and I wasn't finding that yet today.
Oh, okay. We should
And
talk
I think then you also need to run something. So from a development standpoint, well, I guess at dev. So when I'm running that debugging, and I'm running in like IIS Express,
Yeah.
I wonder if I need to. I think there's like like some Azure thing that you can run locally, right? So it recognizes that you're trying to do that, or,
That
or
you're
is it
trying
going
to
to
pull
automatically, or is my
emulating
you're still
Key Vault
gonna-
is what you're saying?
well, yeah, I was wondering about emulating Key Vault, but at there's two things. One is emulating Key Vault, which I think would be kind of cool.
Well-
But the other is, while I can do that in Azure in those app settings,
Yeah.
in that, you're right, can I do
And
that
it's
in my web
locally.
config when I'm running an IIS Express?
Ooh.
And so that's where I wonder, like, does it work? But I thought I remember hearing about something that you need to install so that it will treat it like, oh, you're running this thing in Azure. Or like, I don't know, I'm making it up.
Yeah, that's a good question. I
Yeah.
would think I would have to dig into it. My gut feeling would be no, right? It's an app setting thing. You're in Azure, it understands what the app
Right.
settings are versus sitting in your web config. It doesn't
Yeah.
know how to talk to. Then that was why you had the plugins to say,
Right.
well, this is how you talk to Key Vault in your code. Interesting.
Are you guys using Azure much?
It's new,
Yeah, it's new
and
for
there's
us.
some opportunity, I think, which I think is good because there's a lot of folks that maybe are just now beginning to come around and say, especially I think a lot of the platform as a service features are gaining traction in ways that maybe people thought they wouldn't. That you hear the argument against of like vendor lock-in or something. It's like, okay, that's
true.
That's okay, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm getting 50, 60, 70% of boilerplate stuff done for me, maybe I can afford the lock-in and say I can put that time into a transition if for some reason I need to go off the cloud.
Sure.
Other organizations will bend over backwards to build a whole IaaS-based environment to then deploy Kubernetes and say, yes, we want managed, but we want it on top of IaaS, which is okay, I guess. I get it. I get it. For one thing, you probably stay up to date if you want to, whereas, and I'm totally guessing here, whereas if you took a vendor's Kubernetes platform, you might have to wait for them to get things to catch up, but I don't know that that's true.
There was, we'll go back and look in some of the documentation, but the Kubernetes documentation, when they say, hey, we want to install Kubernetes somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
Their first line of where to go is, you've got services available in various cloud providers that will already have these things up and running. Use that first.
I've heard that too. I've heard that the documentation no longer says, here's how to install it on-prem. It's more like, don't do that.
Right.
But I don't even know, do they even provide it anymore?
I
Or
think
do
there
you have
is
to,
a
click through somewhere.
if you've got to click 5 or 6 times, but you must really want to do this.
Yeah. They're like,
So
okay.
we'll kind
But
of
we don't recommend it.
That's not their first stance.
Use the service. Yeah.
And with as easy as it is to spin something like that up, I mean, I had a conversation with a customer last week where they were interested in doing containers, and Kubernetes, became the kind of the de facto orchestration tool for it. So a couple clicks and you're there, which is pretty cool. But with some of the stuff that we have in Azure, there's some really cool things up there called DevSpace, which gives you the ability to actually build containers. So in Visual Studio, say, write a container and have that be deployed into a Kubernetes environment running in Azure. So I don't have to have Docker worry about making sure I have all of the other spaces that might need to be there for this other service. Push it right up there. So there's some cool things, and it'd be great to do a couple walkthroughs of that. Maybe this application or one of the pieces of the app that we're writing winds up being a container. So what it looks like.
Yeah.
I mean, it's what I'd like to also, talk about in the future. I'm a guest here. Hopefully, you guys will let me talk more in the future. But like, what I'm finding is that, and Rich knows this better than anyone, I think, is that when you open this door to Azure and you say you're starting to dabble in it, there are so many. Each step is a new wow, we got to rethink our whole strategy for that, right? Not a bad thing, the good thing.
No,
but we had to think of it like Key Vault. Okay, there's a new thing, right? So we're using that for the first time. Well, okay, we'll get good at it, right? We were talking today about what's going to be our strategy for database. We're trying to do a lot of things, without having our own servers and stuff like that in Azure. So we're using, a lot of the platform as a service stuff. And so, Azure SQL. And how often do I want a new Azure SQL server? Because a SQL database has to be on a server, right?
Yeah.
It still has to be, even though you thought
there's some.
Well,
There, yeah.
Azure SQL Server list is in preview, right?
Oh, okay.
Is that what it's called? I forget what it's called.
Huh?
SQL serverless.
I'll look it up. While you
That
guys
would
are-
be interesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll look it up.
I
while you
haven't
guys are
even
talking.
hadn't heard that, so that's a cool thing we're talking. But you know, how often do we want a new database? Because a database you're paying money for.
Yeah.
Every
Yeah.
time
But
you
you're
have a
right.
database.
Databases go
Some
on
of
the
them are
server.
cheap. $5, right, is the cheapest you can get it for. Okay, so I need a sys test, a QA, a UAT, and a production database. Let's just say, right? So that's $20. And some of these apps, we have 200 apps. You know, some of them are really require, you know, strong stuff. Some of them they don't get used that often. Do we really want a database?
So now you have to ask yourself, do you want to start packing them because they don't need all that space? But do I really want to start packing
And
them?
then you get into problems with, you know, ARM templates and like, you know, you're combining
Yeah.
resources. But this is
Didn't we
the
have the same conversation on Prem, right? You know.
yeah, but we had a
Do
different
I want
answer.
another SQL license?
We had a
Right.
different answer today.
Okay.
We had a different answer today, and I think you're going to find this interesting. The answer was, unfortunately, you know, but this is what you guys this is what I hear from Microsoft. How can you get so you spend less money on Azure, right? You're not trying to push me to spend more. You want me to use Azure. You want me to use these tools, but effectively.
Right size, we call it.
Right size. That's what I've heard. Right. So what we decided to do in this case is we said we don't need a database, and that was the interesting epiphany.
There you go. Yeah.
Because this was
Sure.
database for configuration, read-only
Okay.
stuff,
Mhm.
right? It's a very simple app. This one that I was talking about today, right?
You still have to store it somewhere.
You still have to store it somewhere, but we said, well,
But why were you standing up SQL Server?
right, and on premise because it was easy because we
Yeah,
have servers,
it's
and so let's
stupidly
just
easy.
put a table, put all
Right.
data in a table.
Yep.
So then we went back and forth on some stuff, talked about blob storage and different things, maybe to just read some data.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, maybe not the right decision. I took the table that it needs to read this configuration, I turned it into JSON, and I stuck it in a file. And I said, if we change this data once a year, I guess I'll redeploy. And that's maybe not the right solution for everything, because that does lock you into having to do a deployment to change the data. But in this case, the point was, got to rethink things. You really got to think through things differently.
Yeah.
There'll be plenty of times when we're going to need database. But in this case, we said, well, I don't even need a database, right? And that was like a cool, like, yeah, that's when we want to start rethinking about how we put our things in Azure. And it's going to be an exciting year for us because we're going to be doing a lot of this at my company. So I'm psyched.
And that's awesome because, you know, you take it back to what Prem, right? You only had a SQL database.
Right.
That was, everything had to go there. We just, it's a small table, that's fine, it'll go
Right.
there.
What's the difference?
But you have all the various flavors of PaaS data offerings with
Sure.
Azure SQL, MySQL, Postgres, MariaDB, all of those different flavors
Right.
are out there. And then you've got,
Or what could you put in table storage?
All the other storage
Blob
options, right?
storage.
Yeah.
It's like just throw it.
well, table storage is great for kind of what you're talking
This
about.
might
with
have been a good
configuration.
candidate for table. I thought that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Configuration is a great use case around table storage because it's just basically a partition key, a row key, so you can
Right.
find everything back, and then whatever columns you want to come off.
Yeah. And it would be it would probably be better than what I ended up doing today. But the point is, it was easy for me to do,
Mm-hmm.
and got it done. And we're going to think about, we want to play with all these different scenarios so we learn when another app comes along, what's the best one? Oh, you know what? Well, that silly idea of putting that JSON file, that didn't work out so good.
Yeah.
But that table storage was really good. It was easy, and some developers said, "Oh, I didn't like it for this reason." You know,
Mm-hmm.
we gotta play with all this. It's a whole new world.
And not even from an application, you know, what data store are we doing for an application? What data are we using for this type of data in my app?
Yeah.
Right? You know, if you're thinking about, I need,
So not everything. What you're saying is not everything's. It's just because we use SQL.
Yep.
For a particular application doesn't mean everything goes in.
right. I mean, there are great use cases or great reasons that SQL is a great place to store your data, right?
Of course.
When you think about relational information and things of that nature, maybe reporting, those are some awesome reasons. But you may have some more transaction data to have multiple copies around the globe base, or at least around the US, let's say. And there are other data platforms you can use that would do that. So, and then have some way to bring them all back in at the end for reporting, right? So your data lifecycle and your data flow is really important for your application to understand what makes sense.
I'm finding it fun to think about these things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's hard to believe that I'm spending this much time on some of these topics, right? But it's a whole new world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, absolutely.
exciting.
Well,
You
it's
gotta get
funny
you
because you
using it.
mentioned you talked about. So I think it's true today that in Azure, in order to use Azure SQL,
Yeah.
you then have to provision a SQL server, right? You provision a server, and then you can put multiple databases on a server if you want, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
so,
yeah, you
like
definitely
they
can, yeah.
announced SQL database serverless
All
at Build,
right.
which is up on the screen right
Forgot
now.
about that. Yeah. I totally forgot that they
I saw
announced that.
this announcement. The reason why this one stuck with me is it was no more than a few days earlier when I had Rich explaining to me the relationship between Azure SQL servers and Azure SQL database, because I was like going, wait a
Yeah.
second, I thought this was PaaS. I didn't
Right.
want to think about this crap anymore. And he's
Right.
like, well, you got to have databases on a server. And I was like, oh.
But it's
So SQL
Yeah.
database server is, stop thinking about the servers, but you pay for it in a way. They even show it in the graph. Is I think today it's good for workloads that can afford cold start issues. Because for example, if you configure this, you configure it, but if your workload goes inactive, you can configure like, well, if I'm inactive for 5 minutes, just shut me down because I only get used twice a day, and I only get used between the hours of 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. for a big data load, so I don't need to be paying for it 24/7, right?
It's like the cars when you drive up to a light and that
It
car
just
shuts
shuts
down,
down,
right?
right?
Saves gas and it just starts it right
So
back up.
it
And
was
that
just
still
something.
freaks me out every time I hear a
It's
car
weird,
start up
right?
out of the
Yeah.
blue, right?
So this is cool.
It
So
was
yeah.
just, it's in preview, and I remember it stuck with me because I had just had the conversation about Azure SQL Database and Azure SQL Server,
yeah.
something like that.
I think that's what it's called.
And I
yeah.
said, okay, then look at this. This is
yeah.
calling to me saying this is what you were asking about.
Right.
And I was like, oh, okay. Now, granted, they talk very openly about like when should you use it, when shouldn't you. It's a price performance optimized database for single databases with intermittent, unpredictable usage patterns that can afford some delay and compute warm up idle usage periods.
Right. So then, of course, the question is, well, what does that really mean? What is some delay? Some delay. Are we talking milliseconds? Or are we talking minutes? Well, minutes is a big
Let us
deal.
know. Come back on the
Yeah.
show.
Yeah, this is a
and
cool
let us
topic.
know.
I'm gonna have to play around with that.
Yeah, that looks pretty cool.
You haven't played with that yet?
I have not.
Okay.
No. I think about it. I do. So in my conversations, they're more the app dev side of things. We have a separate architect that's data stuff, data and AI, but there's a lot of overlap when you start that app. So
Lots of overlap.
something to look at as well.
Add it to the list.
Yep,
Oh, I know.
the show. It's another show.
So I thought, wow, we've had a long conversation tonight.
This
So
is
I
a great
thought I
conversation.
would bring something up that I get emails. I got an email about during the show.
Okay.
Really?
Yeah,
During this show or during your earlier?
during the show.
Okay.
I think I get emails on.
Wait. I just want to warn you about this. The
Go ahead.
prince who needs you to send
I
him money is
understand.
not real.
I understand. So I brought up on my screen. This is the VS Code repo.
Switch it?
Yeah, it's not. Nothing wrong with it.
Okay. Just making sure.
This is the VS Code repo. When VS Code was new, there were issues with it such that in a VM, maybe like a Linux VM, one example, maybe just your video card, where VS Code used GPU acceleration, and if it just didn't work out for you, and in my case, in an Ubuntu VM, the screen was black. The window was just black. And so there is a way, you say code, and you go -- disable -GPU, something like that. But you had to do it every time.
Okay.
You couldn't just say, can you just not use the GPU anymore?
Make it a
Like,
user setting or something, right?
In the
Yeah,
the
it makes sense, yeah.
worldwide settings for that machine.
Right.
So in November of 2016, somebody posted an issue, add a setting
Wow,
to
who would that
disable
be?
GPU acceleration. And I reproduced it. Look at, man, this is version 1.7. I reproduced it for him. I said, look,
What day was this? November 8th,
it's
2016.
almost 3 years old. And I've said,
Yeah.
here's how you do it. Launch from the
Right.
command line. If the first window is launched this way, subsequent windows launched will follow the option of the currently open window. However, you got to do it every time. If you reboot the machine, you got to do it again. And I said, once I identify that a machine can't run VS Code effectively, can we have a way to add it to settings.json and be done with it? And they wrote, and we talked about it a little bit,
Yeah.
and they kind of said, like, man, this is tough because
Really?
the decision to disable the GPU happened so early that we haven't even read settings.json yet.
Wow.
And
That
I will
makes
admit,
sense, right?
I
can
will
see
admit,
why.
I was a terrible open source person. I did not try to figure out how it worked in code. I just sort of said like, well, I'll let them deal with it. And
Oh,
just
yeah,
now
yeah.
here on the show,
Okay, yeah.
2 hours ago, here's somebody saying, can you please do this? VS Code needs a setting. Come on, team. And look at
I
2
thought you were
hours
going to
ago,
say they
9
fixed
days
it.
ago.
No, I thought you were going to say
No,
they fixed
no,
it.
10
I was
days
all
ago,
excited
10
to
days
say
ago,
they fixed it 3
18
years
days
later.
ago. I get these emails because I'm the
Because
issue.
you're the owner.
I created the
So
issue.
every time someone comments on this, you
Yeah.
get something. I really thought you were going to say.
I wish I
I'm
could say
feeling all-
what I wish I could
wah,
say
wah.
is
Like,
that, and look at who submitted the pull
Yeah.
request, but I'm
Yeah.
not that good.
Wow, that's a tough one.
But
'cause
I
like you
remember
said, the
them
way it
talking
starts
about
so
it.
early.
You could find it in here where they said, you know, this looks really tough because it's in here somewhere. So, in any case, I want to make sure people know
Yeah.
that currently today I'm using this bit.ly link to point to the GitHub site for a meetup.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe long term we'll want to rethink that. But what happens is there's a formula to it, so you don't even have to wait for me to put up the link. It's just PDN and the day's date, and you end up getting to watch, somebody just filed it. They just commented on the issue, so my phone would buzz. Watch. Is you get here, so you get to tonight's hands-on lab README, which eventually takes you to the YouTube channel, and you can watch the replay, and then you can follow along, and you can do everything we did tonight with all this code. And let me see if somebody really did. No, I didn't.
Just an email.
I said that would have been
You're not that
hilarious.
cool.
If somebody said, "I'm going to go say hi, Space Shot," over in the issues.
That would be
right?
kind of neat. Yeah, that would have been cool.
In any case,
So, and this is good because I used some of this code. You know, I was following along today.
right. I
and
feel
it's
like
a
people
really
try
nice
to
way
follow
to do it.
along,
It's
and
great.
if you just don't forget, you forget what the speaker says, you didn't quite catch up with the code. Here's your chance. You're not sunk. Do it again.
Yep.
Right. Follow along with us. So, did we get anything? You know, I didn't. I thought I connected to the Restream chat, but I think I really missed it today. I saw that we had Bruno here. We had Halcyon Tribble here. Who's a great friend of the show. Bruno's a great friend of the show.
Yeah, Bruno's the one who said he thought that the index, you know, was like
0 to 3 means
yeah,
0,
you're
4,
right.
3.
That
4,
was
3.
Bruno, yeah. And yeah, it's cool that you got people that are like becoming part of your community now.
Yeah, well, that's the hope. That's the hope. Is
That's
that
what we're
more of
trying
you
to.
come, and we're glad you're here. And I know it's where we are. And I don't have the chat up today. I like to have it here, and I just didn't get that ready. It's up there, but you know, I know that's not Comic Sans, Rich. But let me tell you,
That's hard to read.
That's
I don't know
comic
what that
book.
is. What is it?
It's comic book.
Well, let me tell you, I can't.
I was trying something. There are
I appreciate it.
there
And
are-
you know, you do a great job, but I can't read it.
Which is the one on the left?
It might
Is
as
that-
well
is
be.
That the,
Can you read it from there?
that's the stuff that's the
Yeah.
stream.
Yeah.
So that's the that's the
That's
restream.
people
so
chatting
yeah,
right
what
now.
you're looking at over the shoulder here is in Mixer. So the left side here is just what we're pasting in out of screen. So that's the URL it's showing. On the right side is an actual Mixer.
That's the actual chat.
So
from
anyone who
Mixer.
goes to Mixer,
But if they're
will see
watching
the
on Twitch or YouTube or Mixer and they chat, it's getting pasted right there.
okay,
And I used to have it up here so that I could follow along. I wouldn't have to look up there. I could just say like, "Oh, hey, we got this great comment." And I botched it today setting this
so
up.
I don't get that
So-
on my screen, right? Well, let's see. This is the old.
No, certainly you could bring up.
I don't think I noticed it because when I was watching the stream today,
Mm-hmm.
so this is like how dumb is Andy, I guess. But I don't get. Oh, it's there. See, now I didn't even notice it. I'm looking on the right side
Right.
because that's just what I'm trained to do, and didn't even see this column here.
Oh,
So
we
it's
have
looking-
our friend C# Fritz is in here today.
Yeah, what's he
Azure
saying?
He's been all
table
over
storage.
this. Yeah.
I'm going to hang with Schwami instead.
OG Visual Studio Code feature. But yeah, I wish.
That's
So,
cool.
He's gonna
So,
hang
Fritz?
with Schwammy.
Schwami.
Oh, I'm
yeah.
sorry, Schwammy. No Schwammies.
Gomez, Chris
Thanks for
Gomez.
joining us tonight. Jeff, that's great. I'm glad you're here. So yeah,
He's the
we
man.
have a good
He's awesome.
conversation. That's what this is about. Some tech talk and fun, and hopefully we get
Other people are talking here. Rick is cool.
hey, Rick is cool. 20 followed us.
Okay, I get it.
Thank you for joining us, and don't forget, the Philly.net meetup site is where you see all of our events, and we basically, you know, we that's where you can find out when we're going to be here, both streaming live, and then we do our after shows after meetups, and then we also try to do them every Wednesday night. We're doing pretty well. but sometimes real life gets in the way, and we have to cancel one. So what we have to get better at, and we keep saying this, is kind of putting that out there for the world to see. Here's where you can go if you're a Twitch user. The twitch.tv/philly.net, which is Philly.dotnet.
Yep.
That events tab is mostly being kept up to date. We're trying. YouTube has an events feature.
Yes.
But we have a community on Mixer. We had Rich is cool just joining us from Mixer, and we really appreciate it. And so that community, a lot of them I think just know that we're here. I mean, we have 10 folks viewing right now. So what do I think about Mortal Kombat 11? Yeah. MK11 is pretty good. Unfortunately, we're not talking games tonight, but MK11 has a great story, of fun cinematics, and I watched Cabby play it. You should check out mixer.com/Cabby, who is a great Mixer game streamer, maybe one of the best on the platform. Make sure you're following him. And he played a lot of MK11 too, which totally off topic. So we are covering it all here.
I'm curious to know like what people. I would like to. You get feedback from listeners, viewers that say what format. Like so today we've started by talking about a follow-up to the hands-on lab. Yeah. Right. Which I think is good to keep that conversation going. And then of course it went all. I mean we're going pretty long, right? This is
we took a long time.
But I wonder like what's the right format.
Right.
I enjoyed both parts of that conversation.
Yeah, we wondered too.
yeah, right.
and we've tried some things like little code segments, the full length
I like
Philly.net.
codes. Well, you kind of did code samples today. It wasn't a 15-minute segment, but you showed live code, and so I think there's a variety of things that can go on.
Yeah, I think so too.
Well, you guys keep up the good work. It's really great.
Well, thanks, Andy. We're glad you're here, and you're welcome anytime.
Yep.
Because we get a good point of view from someone who tells us he's not writing any code, but believe me, is technical as all get out.
He knows what's being written. Let's put it that way.
And manages people to help them succeed, which is a great point of view. I like to hear how do you bring these features and this tech that we're talking about to teams so that they can succeed. That is so hard, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the same day, so Jeff is talking about Overwatch League Championships are here in Philly apparently, but it's the same day as TwitchCon. That's a tough one. That's a tough one, Jeff. So,
cloning might be in order.
Yeah, I don't know. You might have to. I don't know. Overwatch here in Philly, and isn't the Philly team? Philly team, I think, is pretty good. Jeff reports on it quite a bit. Yeah. If you watch Jeff's stream, twitch.tv/C#Fritz, and you got to spell that all out. CSHARPFRITZ.
Just like he has it as your username going up on the chat there.
Somebody just bought their tickets.
Make sure you use that.
Xcode 24.
And he talks a lot about the Overwatch League.
Yep.
And I think the Philly team is. I mean, I hear that they're doing okay. I admit I'm a little out on that one, but not because I don't like it.
Yeah.
I play solitaire.
Yeah. I'm watching a little bit of Stanley Cup Finals right now, but even then, I'm not able to stay up for them. So.
Oh my gosh, basketball too. It's so late.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're old men.
That's right.
All right, 10 o'clock. Thanks for being here with us. I think we're going to go ahead and let it go.
We're going to call it a show?
We're going to call that a show. We talked about a lot of great stuff tonight. We're going to have to figure out what the heck we call this and what to put in the description. Make sure you watch Scott K's talk from Code Camp about C# 8. And there's just a lot of great stuff on that Philly.net archive. It's getting better and better. The views are going up, and we thank you for all of that.
Do you want to mention the Kids Can Code night?
Kids Can Code's in 2 weeks. It's not streamed or recorded.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Just for the sake of our kids here, just the easiest thing to do. So 2 weeks from tonight, we are not live with the meetup. We are discussing about the after show. So keep an eye on those Twitch events and YouTube events to see if we're going on.
Yeah. But
I don't play Fortnite.
No,
it's not that I don't like Overwatch. I actually did play some Overwatch recently. It's not my primary game. I'm playing a lot of Dauntless right now, if you must know. But
I'm stuck in Rocket League. That's the only one.
Rocket League's a great game.
I know.
I'm terrible at it.
I love it.
A lot of people say like, "Oh, Rocket League, you just drive a little car around." Yeah.
No.
It's not. It's tough.
There's
game.
a 3D element to it.
We gotta get my son. It's like we got to talk about. He plays what's this Clash of
Clans?
On the iPad where you drag these little characters around and try to take down somebody else's towers or something like that.
Okay.
He loves this game. He's playing this all the time. Now he's back to that game. It seems like it's back popular again.
Well, Xcode, thank you for being here tonight as well.
Yep. Thanks
for being here. I wanted to make sure you were here with us on Twitch. 3 great communities building. We get views on all 3 now, and
That's cool.
so it's good. It's
Yep.
good. We're just glad you're here. We're glad you're enjoying it. So I think we really will let it go. Thanks to everybody. Thanks to Rich for the awesome production work.
It's hopscotch with
As
real
always.
scotch. Thank you, Fritz.
That's
And then
awesome.
we have the Schwamster here, who techbash.com. Make sure you read up about
Appreciate
that conference.
Yep.
And we will see you again, Andy. I'm sure. So
Thanks.
I'm Chris,
Definitely.
Andy, and Rich. Have a good night. We'll see you next time.
Good night, everyone.
All right.